Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
I was talking to friends the other night, and they were talking about horror films that they watch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I have the perfect idea for a horror film. And they're like, what is it? And I said to them, all right.
They got very excited.
They got really excited. I said, all right, imagine there's a woman and she's very hungry. And her name is Abby. And she can't get food fast enough at a restaurant. And the whole film is about her turning into a monster because of hunger. They're like, sounds terrifying. I was like, it is. I've lived it. I've lived that horror film.
That's hysterical. Honestly,
Hanger does some crazy shit to people.
I am not my best self when I'm hangry. It's like the worst version of me. If there was ever a time that I was scared people were filming me, it's when I'm at a restaurant and I am way too hungry. And here's the thing that happens. When you're too hungry, you lose your core values. Like, so I care about being kind and friendly. That goes out the window.
Not when you're hungry, you don't.
Yeah. And not only do you lose your core values, but you also lose like desire for good food. Because when I'm hangry, I'm like, I don't effing care. Get me the thing I can get fastest here now.
Let me add to this. You also, along with not caring, lose all logic.
100%.
Because I'm like, Abby, logically, you could do these things. It's not that big of a deal. But your logic has gone out the window.
No, because I get tunnel visioned. I get so focused on that I am starving and the feeling is so uncomfortable in my body and I want to solve that problem. And so I am not very open to brainstorming or multiple options or solutions.
No. And the people paying the price are the waiter and your husband.
And my friends who are with me. One time, one of our good friends told me, he's like, when I go to restaurants with you and you're hangry, I try to be really nice to the people around us to compensate for how crazy you are. And I was like, I know, I'm working on it. But one of the things that I've actually worked on doing, the other thing about hanger that we didn't mention is whatever it is at the restaurant that you can't eat, you stuff your face with when you're hangry.
Oh, yeah. You smash rolls for days that don't even taste good.
Yeah. Things that you don't even care about. And then
I'll eat saltine crackers just till my mouth is exploding with them.
No, that's very real. And then by the time the good part of the meal comes, you are now full on the thing that was disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you feel like you wasted the whole experience of eating out at a restaurant. And we've been having conversations about this a little bit in our world. And then also for me with some clients around the concept of hunger and desperation and how what we just described is a very real analogy for life. When we get, this is a quote that I got from Rachel. She might've gotten it from somewhere else. I'm not sure, but
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Michael Scott. With enough hunger or desperation, any one of us can compromise our core values.
Yeah.
And this is a concept that when we get so hungry, we often lose sight of who we are, what we want, what we're actually headed towards. And then we make decisions that we are not proud of or decisions that keep us in a bad cycle. And a lot of us have so much shame over those decisions because we just don't understand the mechanism of hunger in our life. And so we're going to talk about the day. I'm really excited about it. A practical thing that I learned to do in restaurants, which we're going to talk about this in life,
is bring food with you.
No, honestly, I either bring food with me or I snack before I go to a restaurant if I'm really hungry, because I know if I am a little bit less hungry I will make better decisions and I'll have more fun.
Yes.
If I'm a little bit more full, and this goes for anything in life. This is what we're talking about. Like when you're really hungry, you're going to call your ex up that you clearly know you don't want to be with, and you're just going to mess around a little bit because you just want love. When you're really hungry, desperate to get out of your job, you're going to take another job that you may not like either, but it's just trying to get you out of the one that you're currently in.
Totally.
Like there's a lot
Go
of
from one boiling pot to the next boiling pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you're in hunger is often when you do addiction behavior. And so we want to talk about the journey of how to like fill yourself just enough that your hunger isn't driving you in an unhealthy way.
Yeah. This emotional hunger or desperation that you're talking about, I do want to say that there are a lot of inspirational speakers or religious institutional people that will have conversations like, you just need to get desperate.
Yeah.
You just need to be hungry. If you're hungry enough, you'll go after it. But I think that there's a massive lack of wisdom in that approach. And that's part of what we're going to get into, because this is really standing in opposition to a lot of ways people think you should approach life. Like if you have enough desperation, then you'll actually get up off your butt and you'll do these things. I'm like, nah, but if you have enough desperation, you'll get yourself into circumstances
where your logic is gone and you're making decisions to eat the thing right in front of you instead of make a choice that you really want. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking there's an analogy of this, I think, in the Bible that I think is a great life analogy, which is there's these two characters, they're brothers. One is named Jason. That's not true. One is named Jacob and one is named Esau. I put the two together.
Yeah.
And basically Esau is going to get the inheritance. He's the firstborn. He's going to get all this blessing. And Jacob wants it. And so Esau goes out hunting, so he hasn't eaten for a long time. When he comes back, Jacob has made soup that is ready right there. You can smell it. You can taste it. And Jacob is like, I will, if you give me your birthright, your inheritance, I will give you soup. And Esau says, okay. Let's do that.
Jacob's very crafty.
It's a story of crafty for sure. And so he loses this thing that was so important back then. It was a long-term valuable asset. He loses for this short-term moment of pleasure because he was so hungry. And I think that story is meant to be an analogy for us that we all can lose our mind. We all can compromise something that really matters to us or long-term gain if we get too short-sighted on what we need to feel full in that one moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great story. It makes me think, I don't like soup. If you have soup, you can keep your soup. I don't need your soup.
No soup for you.
No soup for you. Anyways, yeah, I know that I have found myself in a lot of places of desperation. I think that's something that I want to talk about today at some point. I want to get into areas where I got desperate. I know that for us, we had some key foundational ways when we bonded where we started looking at hunger and desperation. And we started saying like, how do we want to approach life? How do we want to approach our decision making?
Yep.
I think that one of the words that's a really good one that I wanted to bring up here is FOMO. So instead of the word desperation or hunger, we could also use the word FOMO.
Yes.
Because that's very relatable to a lot of people. A lot of people have FOMO. Recently, I was following stuff with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
A friend of ours is a Bitcoin junkie and stuff like that. And there's this great teacher talking about Bitcoin and how most people lose their asses in the stock market and especially around Bitcoin because of FOMO.
Oh.
You know, you get into a situation where you see something accelerating and going up and you get this desperation.
I gotta get in.
I gotta get in because there'll never be another in or another opportunity. And then all of a sudden they get in at the peak, then it starts dropping. Then they
panic.
get out at the very bottom of it. They end up jumping out almost at the bottom and they've lost all the potential for gains, all this type of stuff, right? But it's that thought of FOMO. Like FOMO drives so many people inside of life, and it can be in the most tiniest of decisions to the more bigger life decisions. And for us, we made some pretty good packs early on that we've followed for the most part. We've had some bumps in the road, which we're going to talk about. But for the most part, we've said if we're not in agreement with peace inside of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we will not move forward. And that's even unto the loss of things that seem really great.
Yeah. I would like to say, I think the opposite of desperation and hunger would be like surrender and an abundance mentality. So
That's great.
hunger is, I need this thing to make me happy, or I'm desperate for these things to work out because this is the only way my life will work out. Often desperation and hunger, we get really narrow vision, like black and white thinking, and we start believing that there's only one pathway to success, fulfillment, hope, breakthrough, feeling loved. And so we get very focused on that. So people who are lonely can get very focused on the only way that I can be free from my loneliness is to find my significant other, instead of realizing, oh, I could volunteer at a pet store or like the Humane Society. I could hang out with my friends. I could work at a nursing home. Like there's lots of ways that you can meet loneliness as a concept. But when we get stuck on, but there is this one, there's only one path to get what I want from life, then we are giving our power away to the thing that we want. And that creates danger. Anytime that we give all of our power to something that we want,
Mm-hmm.
we are now a slave to the thing we want instead of partnering
Mm-hmm.
and collaborating with what we want. And so I think that I got lost in that sentence.
Abundance.
Yeah. So a lot of my surrender looks like there are always multiple ways that my desires can be met.
Yeah.
Surrender for me isn't that I let go of my desire. I'm not letting go of my hunger for a fulfilling career, but I believe that there's many ways that a fulfilling career could work out for me, many paths to what that could look like, not just one path. And so I think if you can recognize that that is the opposite, feeling like there is an abundance, there's options. It's that feeling like I'm full enough that I can choose what I want to eat at this restaurant. I'm not so starving that I have to take the scraps. I have to beg for crumbs.
Well, there's a core belief, which is everything I actually need, I'm going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might not work out the way that I expect it to work out.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, I have this sense inside of me, inside of my surrender of like, that'll all work out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but this opportunity passed by or that opportunity. Okay, that's fine. It'll work out for me.
Something else will come.
Something else will come.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not desperate for that to happen. I know that I'm going to be okay. And I think that part of that is that we have to resolve the fact that we are not abandoned orphans inside of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So desperation, I just want to add this, desperation and hunger, like this sense of hunger you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, is intensified when you believe that you are almost abandoned inside of the world.
Yeah.
It's all on me to make everything
Mm-hmm.
work out.
Mm-hmm.
And also this belief that I have to obtain something in order to solidify my love, my value,
Mm-hmm.
my okayness,
Yes.
right? And so for me, there's been a resolve inside of me for the most part throughout my journey that says, I know that I'm not alone in this
Mm-hmm.
world. I know that I'm a chosen child of God, that I was fearfully and wonderfully created. There's this belief that I have a creator that's very invested inside of my story and relationships with people that are invested in my story. So I believe that everything is conspiring on my behalf
Mm-hmm.
to move my life forward for me to get what I'm meant to get out of my earth experience.
Yeah.
So there's this settledness inside of me for the most part when I'm connected to those realities.
Now, I'll say we didn't have that when we got married.
Oh, absolutely
Both of us
not.
were panicked that nothing would work out. The belief that you're talking about is that
Constant panic.
I did feel alone and like it was all up to me and it was all on my shoulders and I had to find the one pathway forward and it was high stakes and I'd never get there. And a lot of the journey that we went on to get rid of desperation and hunger was to pursue expanding our beliefs, our mindsets about life, to expand our faith. And it wasn't faith as in like going to church more. It was, I want to believe that the universe is working with me and that things are going to work out. That's a better belief for me to follow. Basically, when we got married, I was like, we read a book realizing your confirmation bias will prove whatever you believe true. So I was like, if I stick with nothing will ever work out for me and I'm on my own to figure it out and I have to do all this, then my confirmation bias will prove that that's true.
Yeah.
If I believe that everything always works out for me and the universe is on my behalf, then I'm going to have confirmation bias prove that true. They did a scientific study. This is interesting.
You're making this up.
No, this is a true story.
All you have to do is say.
They did a scientific study.
And then you can say anything.
Well, this one you can look up. So they asked people if they thought they were lucky or unlucky.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like
they
this
asked
one.
them if they were lucky or unlucky. Then after just talking about that subject, so it was just, do you believe that you're lucky or not? They said, go through this like newspaper and count how many images are on the newspaper. On the second page of the newspaper was this huge block that said, there are 43 images in this newspaper. You don't have to keep looking. That's the answer. The people so a lot of people saw that and stopped counting. They're like, oh, there's 43. All of the people who saw it and stopped counting were the people who believed they were lucky.
Yes.
The people who said they weren't lucky literally didn't notice it.
Not one of them.
And I don't know if it was not one of them.
No, I from what I remember from the article, not one of them who believed they were unlucky
saw that ad.
Skim right past it.
And then they counted. Some of them counted wrong. It was like a mess for them. So just the belief that they were lucky changed their confirmation bias. They started looking for different things. They had and that is the opposite of hunger, right? In the way that we're talking about it in this podcast today is when you feel lucky, there's like, that's a fullness. When you feel like things are going to work out for you, that means you're not desperate. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about kind of some of the lessons we learned in desperation to help us avoid it. And then some of the pitfalls we've seen too.
Yeah. I remember when we first got together, we were trying to figure out how to manage finances together, like every new couple does. And we were very young. We had no money.
No.
we were in survival. And there was one point where we didn't have dishes and we moved into a place to live. And we didn't know where to allocate our funds, and we didn't want to just buy any dishes.
Right.
And I was desperate for dishes. But you wouldn't let me.
Wait, we had like a couple small plates like this. That's what we were
very
eating.
Very tiny ones. We were eating everything off of.
Yes, they were very tiny.
At one point, I went and bought 2 plastic dishes just because I needed a full-size dish. And you were like, we agreed to not buy dishes. I'm like, I just need a full-size dish till we can get actual dishes.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
But that exact night that you bought the plastic dishes is the night that we went to TJ Maxx.
So we were at TJ Maxx and and part of our agreement was that, again, we won't move on things until we have peace in both of ourselves. So we ran across other dish sets where one of us would be like, I don't feel peace inside of myself I don't like it.
Well, it wasn't even peace. It'd be like, I don't like those. I don't like those.
There was multiple different things. But we were in this sense of like, we have to both be fully in agreement, a yes inside of us before we'll move forward.
And we didn't know how much to spend on dishes.
No.
We're like, is this something you invest a lot of money in? Is it not? We don't have very much money, so I don't want to.
So there was this process that was teaching us to not be so quick to make decisions, not be impulsive, I guess is the way to put it, and to partner.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm in TJ Maxx, I look over, I see this amazing set of plates and I'm like, holy crap, and it was on sale. And to this day, I still think like, I would find those plates now if I still had that style and be like, this is incredible.
Yeah, they were amazing.
And
so cheap.
I came running to you and I was like, you have to check this out. And hadn't you already seen them?
I'd already found them and I was wanting you to come look at them.
Correct. And we ended up finding our plates and we bought those plates and we lived off them for the next like 10 years.
Absolutely.
But there was this sense of, I could feel myself breaking down, feeling like I'm never going to get what I need. Give me this plastic dishes. I'll surrender and just give me 2 plastic dishes. And later that night, we actually got what we wanted and needed.
But Yeah, it pulled you out of desperation. The
Yeah.
2 plastic dishes.
Yeah, I didn't buy a
actually
whole
helped
set.
You. Yeah.
I started with, like you talked about with your purse and eating a little
Yep.
bit of food. I was like, I'm just going to buy 2 tiny plates that cost nearly nothing.
Yeah. So that my
So I can
desperation
relieve
is gone,
my
so I can have
desperation.
surrender.
Mhm.
And then we found him that night.
And I settled and I was like, it's okay if it's another 6 months. I have 2 plastic plates to eat.
It's so funny. You know, in that same season, so we were looking for, again, had no money. We're looking for furniture for our place. And we would go on Craigslist and we would find things, and I would feel this emotion that I would describe as ravenous hunger. You'd find a couch that looked beautiful, was in your price range, and you'd be like, we have to get it. And if you know, on Craigslist, like, you have to message and you have to be the first person to ask about it. And then, you know, and so many times I would feel this, it's a manic energy that comes up inside of you that's like, I have to get this. This is and if I don't get this one, I may not get another couch that is this great on Craigslist again. And so I remember there was this armoire.
Ah, the armoire.
And I saw it and I just said, we'll buy it. We hadn't even seen it. We hadn't even looked at it.
I remember this armoire. Oh my God.
I know. We go, and it is a horrible armoire.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it's huge and solid wood. So it's heavy, hard to move. We got it. We didn't even have a house at that point.
Nope.
And so we had to store it at our friend's house. But the feeling of desperation, I'll never get a deal like this again.
Yes.
So I have to get it right now.
What do we even do with that armoire?
We sold it.
We did sell it?
We eventually sold it, but
or
it took
I thought maybe we left it
No, it took like 8 months. It took 8 months
because everyone else knew it was a bad deal.
Yes. Well, we actually made money on it, so that worked out okay for us. Yeah,
cool.
I feel like
I forgot about that. I did hate that armoire.
It was horrible.
Ugly green.
But it was the feeling of, and I remember starting to notice, if you can start to notice body sensations, that's a good way to learn your intuition. So I started noticing when I feel desperate, it kind of feels like a hamster on a hamster wheel, like running on the inside. And I start to feel like panic or manic. You know, another time that I can recognize it, sometimes when I'll go into stores and they have like 70% off, going out of business sale, I will start to feel the like, I have to get everything I could ever need from this store right now because it's such a good price. I can afford everything. And so and what happens is your brain actually starts to like go offline when you get manic, when you get, I would call that like fight or flight energy. Like you're no longer in your regulated space in your nervous system. So you're not in your logical decision-making process. And so I've actually had to stop myself. Like if there's a good sale in a store, I'll have to be like, can I actually come out of desperation and panic? Can I get out of that sense that this is the only time I can get whatever I want? Can I come back to what do I actually need? What is actually, and sometimes I had to just walk away from the sale entirely because I couldn't get out of that energy.
I want to add to this. So,
because lots of times I bought crap I never needed or ever used again.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it was cheap crap, I still wasted money.
Yeah. And you have extra crap.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this, going to the idea of relationships, which you mentioned a little earlier.
Yes.
But this is the same thing. So there'll be a relationship that people are inside of, and it feels like this is way better than previous relationships that I've been in maybe. And my clock is ticking down in my life. And I just have to do this. I have to jump in this. I just need to do it. It's never going to come again. There's never going to be an opportunity like this. This is better than the previous ones. And then all of a sudden they end up in relationships where they're married or they're pretty deep into a relationship that they're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I feel trapped inside of this. Oh yeah. That's because I was like so hungry for connection, for relationship. And I had the idea inside of my mind that I was going to totally miss out and end up a spinster. Is that what they call them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of, I've walked through a lot of scenarios like this with clients who are single for years.
Yeah.
And one of the things is being aware of your hunger level. So when I'm going to a restaurant, I need to be aware. Am I so hungry that I'm going to be an a-hole and not have fun at the restaurant? Am I so hungry that if we have to wait for the restaurant to bring the food that I will lose my mind? So part of living a healthy life is starting to pay attention to your hunger cues and where are you at on the level of hunger. So a lot of women I know, they've been single. So their hunger for relationship is growing. And they finally get into a relationship. And then there's so much expectation or fear, or they settle for it. And so one thing that you need to do in a situation like that, because sometimes you can't help that there's been a drought for a while, like, oh, you haven't dated somebody. So the next time you date it for a while, so it will be more high stakes. So you need people around you where you're like, I'm hungry. So I need you to help me hold on to my core values. I need you to help me notice red flags. I need you to help me be aware of this so that I don't get lost and forget all of who I am and what I want long-term for this short-term moment of pleasure. The other thing, like I said earlier, is how do I create more of a sense of fullness in my life? So if you're in a job and you're desperate to get out of the job, that actually makes you more vulnerable. If you get too desperate, you become more vulnerable to a bad situation, to a scam, to an abuse scenario starting to happen for you. And so even if you're like, okay, well, I could start getting other part-time jobs to help me feel less desperate. Or even I could do a hobby that feels really fulfilling while my job doesn't feel fulfilling, so that we're just taking that edge of desperation off, so that then when I look for another job, I can look for another job out of fullness. And there's a thing that's kind of true about the world. To those who have, more will be given to them.
Yeah.
So the more grateful you are, the more things you have that are bringing you fulfillment in your life, the more you attract things that add fulfillment and joy to your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about the car sales arena.
Yeah.
And how there's a lot of use of that desperation the minute that you step onto that lot.
Absolutely.
Is creating like the ultimate goal of the salesperson is to create a sense of urgency for you, that this is a one-time opportunity. This car is going to be gone off the lot the minute you leave if you don't snag it right now. And the deal that they're offering you is going to be gone off that lot.
Oh, yeah.
And immediately that's where so many people get hooked. Like, I've gone onto car lots with determined internally,
I will walk away.
Not only that, but I won't buy a car today whatsoever. I'm not interested in buying today. I'm only looking, but I can feel hooked by the energy. Like, oh, I can tell I'm starting to feel a desperation just having this person ramble these thoughts off at me because they're creating a pressured
scenario. They're telling me that the only way I can get this one car that will be the car of my dreams and make it work is if I get it today. And the only way I can get such a good deal on it is if I get it right now.
And what's crazy is that usually those individuals are so desperate to make a sale that they create desperation, like an environment of desperation. Everyone's sitting in desperation.
And I think people use desperation against other people.
Absolutely.
I think that's where a lot of people get scammed
it's
and
where
taken
you lose
advantage
in negotiations all the time is if you have desperation. You can't negotiate if you're not willing to walk away.
Yes. And that's
a life experience.
That's not just about cars, that's about relationships. Like, if you are not willing to walk away, then you're desperate for that connection. Then that means they have all the power.
Yep.
And that puts you vulnerable. It puts you subjugated to them instead of equal with them.
Yep.
And and this is a process that if you walk away from this just starting to notice that what desperation energy feels like for you, and then start to just have like, wait, I don't want to move from this place, that would feel like a successful podcast does, because that's what I've started to notice. I'll feel the energy. It's a physical sensation when I start to get manic, when I start to get panicked. And normally it means I have started to believe that this is the only thing that will make me happy, fulfill me. This is the only time I'll get this good of a deal. This is the only person that will ever love me this way. And so we have to broaden our horizons back.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed in my body, so we've been talking a lot on the podcast about body awareness and things like that. When I get a knot somewhere for me, it's in my sternum area and just a little below it. I can feel like a holding of anxiety in that spot. The minute I start having that feeling in my body, I hit pause and I take a deep breath and I'm like, I am in desperation energy or anxiety energy right now. I am not capable of making an informed decision.
Yeah.
So that means I'm either going to put a really big pause on this or I'm going to walk all away from this altogether. And I may not revisit it whatsoever unless I can find my sense of peace.
Yeah. And we have a belief that we've kind of agreed to that if we're in desperation energy, we'll walk away for a day or two. And if the thing is gone when we come back, maybe it takes us a couple days to get out of the desperation energy and back. If the thing is, the opportunity is gone, the business deal is gone, the whatever it is that we're looking into, if it's gone, then we think that was not right for us.
Yep.
Now, there are times that we get a business opportunity and both of us instantly know right away, yes, we want to do this. It's not that we're saying we're slow to make decisions. It's that as soon as we feel that desperation energy, we know that's not how we want to move forward in life. That's not what we want to attract. Those are not the situations. We don't want to be in that energy state.
Yeah.
We don't want to sow into that emotional place. And so we pull back and then we trust. If it still exists, it will exist. And I think we had a great example of this. There was something that we were looking into buying. There was some land that we were looking into buying. And we ended up, somebody else got it. And both of us felt desperation energy, even though it was already gone.
Yeah, we did.
We both were like, oh no, we needed that land. No, we can only be happy with if we got that land. No.
Yeah, and we actually reached out to the person who originally had helped the purchase go through, and we were like, hey, we're willing to pay more than what it was for, and they were like, no, that's not possible. The person's not going to sell it.
Yeah. And so we ended up deciding we got to work through our regret now.
Yes.
We got to get rid of this desperation energy and again, desperation energy was we can only be fulfilled with this land. We can only be fully alive with this land.
So I went on a personal journey of acceptance that was pretty aggressive internally as a side note. So on my end, I was like, okay, I'm going to start praying for the people who are going to have that because I just want to send good vibes their direction and I'm going to bless them. And I'm going to think about the beauty of how life's going to be without that land.
Yeah.
And how things are still going to be great and full. And that is not going to be something that hooks me.
Yeah.
Now, originally, when I first had it happen, like when I first realized I didn't get it, I was in so much stress energy. And I was like, shame spiraling because I missed an opportunity. I was like, I missed this opportunity,
that FOMO.
And I knew about it, and I had multiple chances, and I just passed it over. And I literally had to be like, "Oh, I forgive you, Justin. It's okay that this is where this is at. I'm not bad that I didn't jump on that, and it's not the end of the world." And so again, there was a sense of compassion, connection, and working through to the other end.
Yes. And what happened is we both got to that let go spot, the surrender of we can be fulfilled no matter what. And it's kind of like, it's ridiculous to say in this podcast, because of course we can be fulfilled if we don't have land.
Sure.
But when you have loss or things that you really want, your brain unconsciously says, I need this thing to be okay. Yeah. And so the journey of going back to like, oh no, we can be fully happy and fulfilled.
Yeah. And there's more to, as a side note, there's more to the story of the land than it's just land. There was more to it. It was enough that it meant something to us.
Yeah, it was very meaningful.
And it would
it had a deeper meaning and reason that
it increased the quality of my experience.
Our life dramatically.
Yeah, in some ways.
So however, we let it go and we felt like, no, we're gonna have a great life. regardless of that. Anyway, the land ended up coming back for sale. You found it. We got it on a great deal. And we ended up getting the land. And we moved from a place of peace and relaxation, not desperation.
Well, it was even the surrender of, this is done. I'm okay with this. It's fine. And randomly the person had a falling out with a builder and stuff regarding it and put it right back. And it didn't even go public. I found out about it right before it went public, the night before it went public, and was like, oh, in one phone call I made, there was a gentleman's agreement and I had the land and I didn't pay a dime that over like what I had, what I thought I was going to pay. I didn't pay any of that.
Yeah, totally.
That desperate energy money that I would have lost. And I think that the point of that is just like, that worked out so well for us. And had I not got it, I would still be sitting here being like, it worked out fine.
Yeah, it worked out well for us. It's that mentality that there is, and that we can get what we need.
Yeah.
And we can be fulfilled, whether it's how we think we need it or not.
Yeah.
Now, we have, you have one more story about learning about desperation with editing.
Oh, yeah. I was going to share this real quick. So basically, when we were at our lowest point financially, when we first got married during that season of the terrible armoire and that stuff, somebody comes to me and says, look, I've got a gig for you. It's like 60 to 80 hours. You will pay you at that time. I think it was like $25,000, something like that. Yeah, it was for a film. It was like a huge documentary and stuff. And they were like, we have it in the budget. If you can knock it out, it's going to be like a $25,000 payout.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was so significant that when I told my dad about it, he was so angry
that you turned it down.
Yeah. Because what happened is once they offered it, I came to you and I knew that we weren't supposed to be working in that season. We were supposed to go through the whole season and not work, like, and trust. And I didn't feel peace about this. I'm like, it's
okay. First of all, that sounds like a crazy person. Me and Justin have crazy work ethic. Just for all of you who are listening and new, Justin's been working since he was 13. They have a family-owned business. So, and same with me. I started working when I was 12. So we both are hard workers for so much of our life. We had one season when we got married.
There was a year of us basically not working for the entire year.
Yes, and we had a lot of
which
savings.
Was tormenting in the best of ways.
Yes, and we had a lot of savings and ways that we gave up lots of things in order to make that work.
Yep. I spent years saving. I was a very thrifty person with my checks.
So we're not just saying like, just don't work for a season and turn down work.
So this was all
in context.
In context. Yeah. I mean, it's good to give context. So it's pretty crazy what was going on. And the person's like, 60, 80 hours, you bust it out in 2 weeks and you're going to get paid really well for it. And I kept having this thing hit inside of me. I'm like, I don't feel peace about this.
It just doesn't feel right.
I'm not supposed to do this. But then I had this other side of me that was feeling the desperation of like, we need money. And I called my dad and I shared it with him and I could hear so much disdain. He didn't necessarily say harsh words, but there were just so much disdain in the words that he was saying. Like the subcontext of the emotion was like, you should probably take that. What, and I was like, no, I'm not supposed to. And I perceived strong disapproval, and knowing my dad, that's probably true. Probably true. But anyways, all that to say, I find out, I turn it down. I find out about a month and a half later that there was a falling out with the investor and all the money that they had money that hadn't been paid to all these contractors and all these contractors that had worked their butts off weren't going to get paid a dime.
Yep.
And so I would have spent 60 to 80 hours smashing through a documentary
for nothing whatsoever
because of desperation. Now, Could have worked out that someone else actually got paid and it didn't matter. The point is that I could feel desperation. I could also feel where my peace told me I'm not supposed to participate in this. And I walked away from it and it actually paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what we're saying is we all have an intuition.
Yes.
We all have an inner voice, an inner knowing. Sometimes we don't connect to it, but oftentimes the reason we don't listen to our own intuition is because of hunger or desperation. The reason we go out with that guy when we deep down know he's not the right fit for us, the reason that we take that business deal when we know it feels a little shady, the reason that we do that is because we are desperate for something to happen. And we've seen that happen in business so many times. I can't tell you how many times we've been friends with people who made business decisions out of desperation because so many people want that instant breakthrough.
Yeah.
They want that instant, like they felt like they were struggling and trudging ahead, like working so hard, and their identity feels shame. Like, when will I get that breakthrough that I believe I'm worth? That when something looks like it could be the step up for them, they throw out all their intuition, all of their discernment, all of their logic, and they just jump into it.
I think that's a great point. I actually want to share a story on that with someone. So I had, in our early days when we were first married, had a really good friend of mine who had a company, and the company was something that I thought was really great. What he was
cutting
producing,
edge,
what he was producing was very cutting edge and successful. And one of the things that he had was a deep desire for this company to scale in a really big way. And it was worthy of scaling. It was something that was worthy of that. And
I would say successful in the way that I thought they were doing great stuff, but he probably wasn't making the profit yet that he needed to be able to live the life he wanted.
Yeah. And he wasn't getting the distribution yet.
Yes.
But it was worthy of mass distribution, right? Yeah. So as he's working through, because he had such a huge dream around this and felt like there was a promise that this was all going to work out for him, he needed investors or people to invest or some sort of cash infusion to actually take it to that next level of distribution and stuff. And so a woman comes to him with an offer of this opportunity and says, this is going to make you insane amounts of money overnight. And right off the bat, like, it wasn't just a red flag. It was like a massive red light. There were sirens going off.
Oh, 100%.
There was unquestionably, the minute he tells me about this situation, I'm like, there's no way in hell you should be touching this circumstance.
Yeah, no, this is dangerous.
This is
it does not
scam
look right.
city.
But not only, I want to say that not only did he have financial desperation where he really wanted, he also had, I sometimes call it like a story arc desperation or a redemption desperation, where you just feel like you've been beat down so much. You want a miraculous story.
Yeah.
You want something that happens overnight to prove that you're valuable and that you were right. And then there's all the people in faith communities that are like, God's been telling me for years that this is going to take off. And people grow weary as time goes on. The longer you've desired something, the more desperate you can become. And that's what had happened with this person. Their dreams had felt so big, but getting to them had felt like just hard work. And so they'd grown desperate. And so when this situation came, their hunger for this amazing instant breakthrough overtook them. They got so lost in the fantasy of what their life could be if this worked out this way, that they didn't question things. They didn't look at what could be wrong. And I remember you actually questioning.
So yeah, actually I confronted him on this and I said, hey, let's talk about this. And I was very kind, but I was very direct, because I was like, oh, I can see that there's a delusion that's so strong here that I can't tiptoe around this. Yeah. So I said, here's the reality. This person has come into your world to scam you. They've created a world where basically they've told you that anyone who tries to challenge you on this isn't for you. And I'm just telling you, this is not going to work out. This is going to burn your business to the ground.
Totally.
If you continue down this pathway with this person. He told me that I was just jealous. This is what she said people would do. And I was like, case in point.
Yeah.
And I had to be like, all right, I'm going to let you walk this out. Like, I'm not going to engage this any further.
Sure.
That's on your journey. And sure enough, exactly What we said would happen
Well,
would.
and that's what it was, a too good to be true offer.
Yes.
And when we are desperate, we are vulnerable to too good to be true situations.
And so when I look at it, I don't think what a dummy. I look at the situation, I go, oh, any one of us could be in that.
Absolutely.
And just because he got hit on that scale of stuff, daily people go through micro desperation moments where they have that same scam at their door. That scam may come through many different avenues.
Oh, yeah.
But the whole idea is that thing that feels like it's a promise that we go ahead and yield all of our wisdom to.
Totally.
And all of a sudden we get ourselves in circumstances we didn't want to be in.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say even like this is a lot of times where women get into relationships that are really dysfunctional with men because they're desperate because of their living situation. They need somewhere to live or places where they need money. And so they give up their life to do something where they feel like they're making money, so that there's the desperation really creates a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
We had a story for us, I think, because this is one of our core values, to really not move out of it. And yet we've still moved out of it.
Yeah,
it's very human.
It's really good to
and
share
I have
that.
a lot of compassion for us in being desperate because it's a human part of life.
So I want to say this. We've been working this muscle for years and we still bumped our heads.
Yep. So there's zero shame if this is, I mean, I think most of us could look back to a moment in our life and be like, the reason I gave up my logic or I gave up my intuition or I gave up my core values here was because I was so hungry for this thing.
Yeah.
And so we have a story that in the past few years, we hit a point in business where we were both burned out. There was so much going on in our world, and we were running so hard and so fast in business, and we just were exhausted. And that in itself is its own desperation.
Right.
We were at the end of ourselves and we needed help. And so we decided to use this outsourcing company to try to outsource some of the things that were on our shoulders. And we had, while it was happening, we had red flags the whole way. Every interaction, every leading up, we were like, oh, that's a concern. Oh, that's a concern. But we were like, I'm so exhausted though. We just need help. We just need to get out of this season. We just need to get this situation sorted. And so we went with them.
Yeah.
Do you want to share anything?
Well, yeah. And there was this idea inside of me that I'm like, for every red flag that I potentially see, I can have a solution for it.
Yes, totally.
So I'll just make up for it.
Yeah.
The deficit.
I can figure this out, or it's taking away all this stress. So we can just deal with this stress that it's going to cause.
So I was like negotiating within myself in a place of desperation. So you'll never have a good negotiation with yourself. You'll never have a wise negotiation with yourself if you're in the process of negotiating from desperation.
Yeah.
So.
And I want to say that you can't necessarily get rid of desperation, because we couldn't instantly just get rid of how tired we were and how much need we were having, but we could have found other options.
Correct.
Instead of trying to offload it all instantly.
Because in that, we could have said to ourselves, okay,
we're going to take 6 months to solve this problem.
Yes. Instead of, I just need to make this happen now, whatever, I'll make it happen now. So anyways.
And urgency is another flag of desperation. If you have that urgency, that's often when you will compromise your core values or your wisdom.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is ultimately all of our red flags were correct. Every one of them. And
it was so bad. And it was worse than we could have imagined.
And the lunacy inside of me believing that I could just deal with the red flags, I was like, no, I made that up. I told myself I could. I believe that I could control certain factors. I violated my own principle of you can't
100%.
control certain things.
Yes.
Control is an illusion. So I violated that, and I had to sit there and go like, all right, now I have to face the repercussions of
and
that.
it took us 2 years to clean up the mess of that. Like the amount of things that they messed up in our business was so catastrophic. But we said yes because we're optimistic and we were desperate.
Yeah.
And those two things made us live in denial.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we start to live in denial when we really want out of the pain that we're in.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is, instead of looking at how do I get out of all the pain I'm in, I kind of look at it as how do I get out of a little bit of the pain so that I can make a clear decision? How do I how do I eat a little bit of food before the restaurant? It's how do we find a couple solutions that make it so we feel a little bit less desperate, so that then we can make a choice that we agree with, that we feel peace about, so that we're not making a choice out of urgency. And urgency is probably one of the number one flags, I think, to let me know if I'm in desperation energy, to let me know if this is something whenever I feel urgency, I'm like, I need to actually slow down and see what's going on in here and make sure I don't miss my own voice under the loudness of the urgency.
Yeah. There's very few things where I allow urgency to kick in and run the show. House is on fire. Urgency works for me. A car wreck just happened. Got to get to the hospital. Urgency works for me. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, we have to dial down the urgency inside of our lives. And I think most people are motivated by urgency.
Yeah.
They're not motivated by peace. They're like, what's the most urgent thing that needs to be taken care of, faced inside of my life? And out of that urgency, I will move on that and hopefully clear the urgency. And to me, oftentimes we believe that urgency is an external job versus an internal job.
Well, urgency is that we believe fulfillment is an external job, not an internal job.
Right. So we're looking outside of ourselves, hoping that we can take whatever we need to do out here, which will bring this urgency down. Okay, I fulfilled this. I did this. I'm going to be at peace here, but that didn't deal with it. So we have to actually create a lifestyle of addressing urgency within ourselves. Why do I have urgency? What is my broken belief systems that are causing me to continue to have urgency inside of these areas?
Oh, yeah. How do I get back to trust? I think trust is the opposite of urgency. Trust is things will happen in time. Good things are coming for me. I've seen myself overcome in the past, so I'll overcome now. Trust is a much more stable energy than a panic energy. And so we're wanting you to learn how to tune into your own body, notice what sensations there are, and a reminder to lead from peace and intuition. Like, what is your own voice saying? And then also, if you are desperate or hungry, let people know, hey, I'm in a place where I know that I'm probably not thinking clearly. And be honest, I'm so lonely that I just want this to work out. I need you to help pay attention for really bad red flags so that I don't get lost in this, or so that I don't get damaged in this. I just need somebody to be with me in this. Because I think that that's a really valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
One of the things I think, hunger rises until we hit our threshold of hunger. And then there's a flipping part where we'll do whatever it takes to shut that hunger down.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is learn to notice before we hit that threshold. Before I get hangry in the restaurant, can I notice myself getting hungry before I hit hangry? And that is self-connection and honesty. And it's humbling to let people know that we feel desperate for something. And then and one thing you can do is brainstorm ways with friends. Like, how can I get some of these emotional needs met on the inside so that I don't feel like I need this external thing to be my savior?
I think one of the core lies that a lot of us believe is that fear is a faithful father. So when I say fear is a faithful father, that looks like we believe this idea that there's this provider and a protector that is in our lives named fear, and that fear is going to swoop in and take care of all of our problems if we'll submit to it. And in fact, it's a very unfaithful father. In fact, it's not a father at all. It's not there to father. It's not there to provide and protect.
Yeah.
That's an illusion that we have, is that a relationship with fear is going to do those things. And so we have to identify, like, oh, this fear that I'm feeling isn't here to benefit me.
Yeah.
it comes with the illusion of benefit. Peace is a very faithful Father. Peace wants to guide us and protect us and provide for us. And I had to get really honest about my relationship with fear, because as long as I had a relationship with fear that I wasn't honest about, I found myself in desperation scenarios over and over again. And so for those of you who are listening, you may like hear all this and go, okay, I hear some solutions Abby's giving on how to approach this. But I think one of the biggest solutions is, are you willing to come to terms with your relationship with fear in and of itself? And the ways that, from that point, realizing the ways that it manifests, because it manifests as desperation, as a weird hunger, and it's not yielding to you. And you have to realize, like, my fear is not yielding what it actually promises, or what I think it promises, or what I think I want. It's not getting it to me. It's not getting me the resolve of a life that feels peaceful and abundant, and it's not yielding miracles. Like, at the end of the day, when we got into a posture of peace and surrender over the land, what we really experienced was a miracle. We got the joy of a miracle of, like, I had let go of this thing and I had entered into such trust about the scenario. And here I am with the land. And like, this scenario turned out amazing for me. And I didn't make it happen. I didn't control it into happening. I didn't force anyone's hand. I didn't fight with someone or go out of my way to overpay for it. It was like, a miracle found its way to my doorstep as I positioned my heart in a posture of peace and not in fear and regret. Yeah,
I love that. I think this is an inspiring conversation to help people make core values. And I just want to end with this thought of, we have so much compassion. You know, as soon as I realized desperation was why we made that business decision, because we were talking about it probably a couple of weeks ago with one of our employees who's amazing. And we were talking about the situation and how it happened. And I was like, oh, it was because we were so desperate. I didn't feel shame about that. I actually felt relief, like, oh, it makes sense that we chose that. Like, so part of this podcast is not meant to make you afraid of desperation, but also to help you make sense of your story. That when we give up, when we look back on our past and we see moments that we gave up who we were to be loved by someone, or moments that we chose something that we knew wasn't right, but we chose it anyway, moments where we compromised our core values or our core desires because we were desperate. That is a place to begin to have compassion, to understand that that's a part of how human nature works, and to understand the vulnerability of desperation so that we can have compassion for ourselves for why we've made some of the choices that we've been angry at ourselves with forever. You know, for a long time, it's easy to beat yourself up when you make choices that you know you shouldn't have made. But when you recognize, oh, there was a thing going on inside of me underneath that was driving that I just didn't know how to deal with, we can get soft towards ourselves and be kind towards ourselves. And when we acknowledge this is a human experience and we're all going to experience it sometimes, then we can again turn towards reconciling with ourselves.
Yeah, so good. Well, guys, if you're not watching this on YouTube, go to YouTube. You can go to justinabby.com/ The Connected Life, and that will bring you to our YouTube page. That's abi.com. And you can check out the resources that we have on our website there. And on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button to get notified when these get released. And if you haven't shared this, share the podcast. If they impact you, share them to friends, share them on social media. That's what you can give to us with all the free content we give, is that you just share it and drop reviews for us, because that all matters. That's so helpful. It's
really meaningful to us.
Spreading the message. We really appreciate everyone who listens and participates with us. And we love all the stories that we get to hear from people. So, yeah.
I liked being with you.
I have to pee.
I also liked being with you. Thanks for listening. We're so glad you're here with us.
Yeah. Okay. I enjoyed being with you too.
You say after you talk about peeing.
Well, it's so bad right now. It's the only thing on my mind.
What if I keep talking for a long time?
What if I just walk away from this podcast? Like, what if you keep talking like that?
I'm like,
and I just get up like this?
Bye.